on this computer. And we're on. So good morning, everyone. It is Friday, the 11th of September 2020. Slightly delayed, so 10:33, and that's my apologies. I just get held up in another meeting elsewhere.
You're being supervised, weren't you?
I was supervised. It's always good to be well, not always.
Did it go well?
I thought you were going to catch me out there, Steve. But always? Always? Is it always good to be supervised? You know, all
No,
that.
no.
So some people won't get the joke. So it's part of what we discuss every week here. So the wonderful world of NLP, and it's part of what we call the meta model. So it's kind of when people generalize. So I don't know if if you come across these folk in your life, you go, it's all Fridays are always bad, aren't they? Fridays are always bad, always. And you can just gently go, always? Was there a Friday that was ever good?
And the great thing about that is, I'm going off on a tangent because that's what I do. But before I do that, I just wanted to say hello and welcome everybody who might be out there watching us. So listen, it's all about a belief thing, isn't it? So if you believe that Fridays are always bad or Mondays it's always going to rain, and you state them in that universal way that it's always this, then I think it's dead easy to challenge and to challenge the belief.
Yeah.
Because the best way of challenging a belief, I believe, is to challenge the evidence rather than the belief. So if it's always bad on a Friday and you can find one example of a good Friday, not in the Christian feast sense, but a Friday that wasn't bad, then the belief kind of gets really seriously undermined.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. And
it's that prizing apart, isn't it? It's that prizing apart of, like you said. So when you start to go, well, have you ever had a good Friday? And people go, yeah, I have actually. And you could start to then prize that apart and go, oh, that's interesting. So they're not always bad. There might be a few bad Fridays and whatnot. By the way, this isn't the topic of conversation for today.
It's just hey, there's a rabbit hole. We can't leave it unexplored, Jaff. It
was just when I went. I can't remember what I said or you. I said it. I think when I said it's always good to be supervised. Well, it probably is good. It should be. It should be good. It probably is good to be supervised most of the time, but always, I'm not. Yeah. Not convinced about that. So tell us, get involved straight away. Apologies as well. I've just realised we're frozen on Facebook, Steve. So I don't know whether that's because.
Oh no, we're not. Something else to tick off my bucket list.
We're not. I think we're still going. Yeah, I think.
Good.
I have no idea, Steve. Something's happening. Something out there is happening. I'm talking on another screen now, so. It might be a delayed. It might be a delayed time, but hey ho, it's something. And that again was my fault. So last week I don't know what happened last week, but last Friday I didn't record.
That's cool.
And then after last Friday session, I didn't even put the event on Facebook. So some people might be wondering, are they coming on? Are they not coming on? Should we keep ourselves free at 10:30 on Friday? Should we not keep ourselves free? So if you're out there and listening, feel free to say hello and whatnot and get involved in our first bit of the conversation. But now let me pass straight over to you, Steve, to take us through our weekly starter.
Oh, yes. So this week, instead of doing something meditative, we're going to do a bit of, I was thinking of a bit of, is it brain gym or mind gym?
Oh, brain gym. Yeah, the brain gym stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a little exercise. It's kind of, based on, do you remember the alphabet edit that we did when we were training?
Yep.
It's a little bit like that. And I've never tried it when people have been online. So, folks, you're going to have to join in.
Please get involved. Please get involved.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. And let's see how it goes. Okay. So, there we go. All right. So, it's dead simple. You've got the names of colours, but written in colours that aren't the names. So, all we're going to do is go through them, and we'll start in the top right-hand corner, and we'll work our way along the lines. down to the bottom. Sorry, a top left corner down to the bottom right.
Bottom right.
Yeah.
So we're saying the word that's.
First of all we're going to do is say the color. Say the word.
Say the word. Okay.
So the first line is
yellow,
blue, orange. Okay. So let's start again, and we're going to. Well, the first time through, we'll just do it slowly, gently. Yeah. Okay.
Bob.
So join in if you can. So yellow, blue, orange,
black,
red, purple, green, yellow, red, orange,
green, brown, blue, black, green, blue, brown.
Okay, this time we're going to do it a little bit quicker. So, Jaff, can I ask you, could you mute yourself for this? Because what's happening is I'm getting an echo.
Okay.
Is that all right?
It's not often that I get told to mute myself.
Okay, so we're going to do it a little bit quicker, folks. All right. So, same thing. Should we make it? Should we give it a double challenge? What we're going to do is we're going to do it backwards. We're going to start at brown and work our way back. Okay. So, brown, blue, green, black, blue, brown, green, orange, red, yellow, green, purple, red, black, orange, blue, yellow. And breathe. So, Jaff, you are allowed to join in with this, but just I'm watching you.
Okay, sorry, right, okay, right. Now I get it.
So this time, all we're going to do is we're going to say not the word, but the colour of the word. Okay, so yellow is in red, so it starts off exactly the same thing: red, green, orange, purple, yellow, red, orange, black, blue, green, yellow, blue, no, red, blue, orange, purple. It's not easy.
That was a bit of hard work there, Steve.
Should we do it one last time?
Can I try it?
Just doing the colours, okay? So starting down here and working our way back to the top left. So deep breath. After 3, 1, 2, 3. Purple, orange, blue, red, purple, yellow, green, blue, black, orange, red, yellow, purple, orange, green, red. Yes! Not easy, is it?
That wasn't easy. I was trying it with my mic off, and it was quite difficult.
So why do we do that? I guess I use it, or I've used it in the past with groups of school children when attention is beginning to wander a little bit. So after about 3 or 4 minutes, that was a joke, by the way. Yeah, you get it, don't you? Okay. So anyway, the idea behind it, the idea behind Brain Gym is that it looks at our brain as a little bit like a muscle. So if we want to train our muscles to be fit, we give them lots of exercises to do. And the idea behind Brain Gym is that we do exactly the same for our brain. Okay, so that's a little exercise. And the idea behind it is that we get both hemispheres of our brains working together. So I think it's the left hemisphere that recognizes...
Not left is logic. Yeah, so left
words,
is logic,
language, that sort of stuff. And the right-hand side, and I'm aware that might come out wrong on the screen, but the right-hand side of our brain recognizes things like color and is creative.
Creativity.
So if we get both of those things going, then it creates a little bit of a brain buzz.
And I love it.
You're experiencing that now.
And I love it because I don't know about anyone else, either watching live or watching it on replay on YouTube, but sometimes I get stuck in that. So I've got to write a report, and I sit there and I'm like, and write, and nothing happens. And I'm like, I know I can do this. And it's like, okay, right. And I feel as though I have to do this, Steve. It's a ritual I have. I go 3, 2, 1, write. And nothing happens. And I get really, really And until I started learning about brain gym activities, I was just like, why is nothing happening? Why is nothing working? And then I learned brain gym, and my gosh, it gives you a buzz of energy like that, like a serious buzz of
it's good stuff.
energy. And for quite a while as well. So, you want to be careful when you're doing this, because doing it at 8 o'clock in the evening, even though it might give you an energy to get your kids into bed, it might also keep you awake at night. So you just need to be mindful of those kind of tricksy little things there. I just love it. I just love it because it gets you, like you said, it starts to build those connections between the left and the right, and getting them really ingrained and kind of going, right, come on, let's do some work. And reports just seem to flow. Anything else that I found difficult or kind of challenging just starts to flow more naturally. Great way.
Good. And it ties in with what we were talking about a little bit last week, which is about all that thing about state management. So we like to start each one of these sessions with a little bit of state management, and then we usually go on to have a story. But I don't know, have you got something for us this morning?
We do have a wonderful story. We have a wonderful story. Let's have a look here. Fabulous. Okay. And this story is called The Japanese Soldier.
Oh, yeah.
So get into a space that's comfortable for you. That might be just shifting yourself. If you're sat in a chair, just shifting yourself around so that you feel more comfortable. If you're sat anywhere else, just shifting yourself around, moving yourself around so that you feel really comfortable to be able to listen to this story of the Japanese soldier. And you might want to listen to this story with your eyes open or your eyes closed, wherever is natural to you. And this comes from a book called Core Transformation by Connie Ray Andreas. During World War II, at the height of Japanese expansion in the Pacific, there were Japanese garrisons on literally thousands of tiny islands scattered across an enormous expanse of ocean. When the tide of battle turned, many of these were overrun and defeated, but some were entirely missed. On other islands, small groups of soldiers or isolated survivors hid in caves in inaccessible areas. A few years later, the war was over. But since these survivors didn't know this, they continued to struggle, maintaining their rusty weapons and tattered uniforms as best they could, totally isolated, yearning to be reunited with their command. In the years immediately following the war, many of the soldiers were discovered when they shot at fishermen or tourist boats or were found by natives. As the years passed, these discoveries became less frequent. The last one was some 30 years after the war had ended. Now, consider the position of such a soldier. His government has called him, trained him, and sent him off to a jungle island to defend and protect his people against great external threat. As a loyal and obedient citizen, he has survived many privations and battles through the years of war. When the ebb and flow of battle passed him by, he was left alone or with a few other survivors. During all those years, he had carried on the battle in the best way he could, surviving against incredible odds. Despite the heat, the insects, and the jungle rains, he carried on, still loyal to the instructions given to him by his government so long ago. So how could such a soldier be treated when he is found? It would be easy to laugh at him and call him stupid for continuing to fight a war that had been over 30 years. Instead, whenever one of the soldiers was located, the first contact was always made very carefully. Someone who had been a high-ranking Japanese officer during the war would take out his old uniform and samurai sword out of the closet and take an old military boat to the area where the lost soldier had been sighted. The officer would walk through the jungle calling out for the soldier until he is found. When they met, the officer would thank the soldier with tears in his eyes for his loyalty and courage in continuing to defend his country for so many years. Then he would ask him about his experiences and welcome him back. Only after some time would the soldier gently be told that the war was over and that his country was at peace again, so he would not have to fight anymore. When he reached home, he would be given a hero's welcome, with parades and medals, and crowds thanking him and celebrating his arduous struggle and his return and reunion with his people. So that story has been reprinted from The Heart of the Mind by Connie Ray and Steve Andreas, and they offer it with thanks to Greg Brodsky. So Greg Brodsky, Heart of Mind, and Connie Ray and Steve Andreas, if you're interested to read more of this wonderful stuff that's been put together.
That's an amazing story, that, isn't it? And that idea that,
Incredible.
for some of those guys, the war just kept going because they didn't know. I found it quite moving, actually, because my dad served in the Royal Navy in the Second World War. Yeah, and do you know, for an accident at birth, that could have been him.
Yeah. It's again, it's how we make sense of the world, isn't it? For those soldiers, they were doing it, you know, bless them, from the best intention possible. You know, we want to continue protecting and fighting for our country. And
that presupposition that all behaviour is positive. So there's a goal behind it. There's a purpose behind it.
And there's another one here about where is it gone? Where is it gone? I'm just sorry. I'm looking around my desk because I've got them all stuck up on the top of my desk here. Where is it? Where is it? This thing about people working perfectly.
Yeah.
And we were talking yesterday about how you know, actually, bless them, they'd been communicated. They'd been given a message. They'd been given a message, and they listened to that message no matter what. You know, they'd be given a message: we're going into war. You need to protect us. We're going to ship you off to this island. On that island, you need to protect yourself. And they listened to that message so wonderfully well. And like the story says, people could laugh at them and go, "You were a bit stupid, weren't you? Listening to that message.
Didn't you realise?
Didn't you realise what was going on?" But they didn't. And they did that from that place of positive intention and you know, being really supportive and just listening to that. And I think, you know, we were talking about yesterday how communication ultimately, you know, we talk about NLP. NLP is, we've said this before, is modeled on how people do things really, really well. And the basic for me around that is communication. How do we communicate with people effectively and efficiently, and in a way that gets the message out there that someone really understands? And how do we then recall that message? You know, that the end part of that story where the officers would take out their old uniform and they sat. Beautiful communication. You know, it's not just let's just go to that island in our jeans and our shirt and go, hey, come back home. Or it was that we've given them a message, we've communicated with them in one way, we need to communicate back in exactly the same way as well. So for me, it was there's something around that, around how do you make that happen. And yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? It's a strange one, how you communicate messages and how you where you take meaning from. So that, again, that presupposition, the meaning of your communication is the response you get.
Yeah, absolutely.
That communication that those soldiers got, well, their response was natural and expected.
Yeah. Is your mum back?
She's not. It was just my brother throwing on an iPad onto the bed because I'm the electrician in the house. I charge up all the. My house is a wonderful place, Steve. You need to come and visit my house at some point. It's.
I was thinking we ought to give your mum a slot. You know, it'd be great.
I heard you got some rave reviews over the last week or so. People were saying it was.
Yeah.
People were saying it. She's, bless her. They were saying, "Oh, you need to get her on. You need to just."
We were upstaged, and she didn't say a word.
Very elegantly walking in. And whatnot.
Grabbing your dirty washing and walking out again.
No, Steve, we don't need to keep reminding people about this. That last bit, you don't need to just tell people that. I think that bit is just. We could have just said you walked into my room and praised me with lots of love and.
But my behaviour was purposeful. we? What are we talking about this week?
That whole kind of aspect of communication and the meaning of your communication is, like I said, the response you get. And yeah, where we take meaning from communication, you know, and how. Well, first of all, communication. Let's just start there, Steve. And we learn about this quite interestingly, don't we? About yeah, the amount of people who say that, who say
communication this morning.
Let's
we got
start
more than half an hour.
Well, first of all, I think people seem to see it as something quite concrete, don't they?
Ooh.
This is communication, or you know, this is communication. And actually, communication isn't a physical thing, you know. So we talk about it as though it is a physical thing.
Yeah.
But we know full well that it's not. Or once you start to understand that it's not, it starts to make probably a bit more sense.
We have a word for it in NLP, don't we?
We do.
It's a nominalization, isn't it?
Now, I think the good folk out there who might not be NLP kind of, might not be tuned into NLP or might not be aware of NLP, what is a nominalization?
Do you know, Jaff? He said, passing the book back.
Well, for me, it's like I said, it's something that people take to be quite a physical thing.
Yeah.
And again, the training that we trained, we always talked about, can you put it in a wheelbarrow? You know, so a chair you can put into a wheelbarrow. A nominalization is often a thing that we think is a physical thing, but when you think about it and go, can I put that in a wheelbarrow? Can I put communication into a wheelbarrow? Well, no, because
it's a process.
It's a process, you know. So, and so what do we do with the nominalization then, Steve? So communication, to make it seem so much better and fairer, what do we have to do?
Well, it's about how we communicate. It's about who we're communicating with. Do you mean how do we kind of disarm the
Yes,
nominalization?
yes. Sorry,
right.
Yeah,
so we try and turn it from an abstract noun back into a verb. So it raises questions about how we're communicating and what is the process and who we're communicating with and what is the means of communication. So we kind of, it's an invitation to do a little bit of digging into this abstract process, so that if you say you were working with a couple and they say, well, we're not communicating properly. So for one partner, it could be that the best way to communicate is online or by text or whatever. Whereas, for example, for me, I want everything written down in fountain pen, please, on parchment.
Good luck to Catherine then, I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, communication means different things to different people. And when we assume it means the same thing for everybody, then there's a possibility it opens the door for confusion and disagreement.
I think that's it, isn't it? So I used to work in an organization where I'd go, well, it's clear what the communication plan should be. It's clear. And people would go, well, we don't think it is, Jaff. Sorry. We don't like to disagree with you, but we don't think it is. And I go, but it's clear. It's a communication plan. And it is that thing that perhaps we all think the other person understands what I mean by the communication plan or by the education plan or whatever. And I love it because you could spot a nominalization very, very easily. Very easily. Often, the words that end in shun. So education, Steve,
organization.
Organization. A really, really good one.
Railway station. Oh no, that's different.
No, that isn't that. Good try there, Steve. Organization is really interesting, isn't it? Though, so we work for the organization, or the organization has a set of policies and whatnot, and even policies are filled with nominalizations. You know, and you're going, and for me, it's like I said, turning it into a verb. So that action, what does that action consist of? And also then thinking about, do we have a shared kind of definition? If we're talking about the communication plan, well, do we know what we're communicating, who we're communicating with, by what methods, when, how long for. So all of these things, let's get a shared kind of understanding of what we mean by the communication plan, as opposed to, well, you should know the communication plan.
And of course, the problem is that if we don't do that little bit of research into what communication actually means, then we're storing up problems.
Yeah.
So I can remember working for a school and for a head teacher who thought that the staff weren't communicating properly between themselves. So what she did was there were 2 email systems in the school. So to solve the problem, there were now suddenly 3. So when she said, "Oh, I've sent you an email," instead of looking at one email inbox, you had to look at 3 to find the right one. But for her, communication meant channels of communication. So what she was doing was opening lots of channels of communication, even though for other people who maybe wanted clarity, or they wanted ease of access, or they wanted, just to make life simple, which is where I came from. That was just a nightmare, because actually, if you hadn't got me on that first email account, then I wasn't going to do a lot of digging. I really wasn't.
Well, and I think there's 2 things there for me, Steve. So one is she clearly wasn't clear on communication.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So she thought actually, so what the staff thought was that we're not necessarily getting the message. What she's going is, oh no, you're not only not getting the message, but what I'll do is I'll open up even more channels so that you can get that message. And one of the things we talked about yesterday is this interesting thing about where we prefer to take information from. Information, another nominalization. Look at that, they're coming out, Steve. But where we prefer to take information from. Now, I love emails. I could spend days upon days upon days upon days, believe it or not, in emails.
You do.
And genuinely, sometimes people read my emails and go, that took me 10 minutes to decipher. And that's some really interesting feedback for me to go, right, okay, well, my emails clearly seem to be full of perhaps nominalizations, because what people are perhaps doing is scratching their head going, what does he mean by that? When he says that thing, what does he mean by that? And at the same time, I get really, really upset. So we were having this conversation again yesterday. I get really upset when I put emails, I've put thought and care, and believe it or not, from time to time, love and compassion into the emails, and people to then reply back going, okay,
fine,
or fine, which is a completely acceptable response, because the way that person takes in meaning from communication is perhaps through a different sense. So I know I'm quite visually, and we learn about this stuff at school, don't we? VAK and all that kind of stuff. And that was more about kind of learning styles and whatnot. And I agree with it to some extent. Actually, what this world taught me to do was you've probably got a preferred sense for taking in the whole world, not just learning, but a lot more of the world. And I know for me, I'm quite a strong visually / feelingy kinesthetic person. So I'm kind of sat there going, I've poured my heart out, and I've kind of put all my energy into this email, and all I get back is a fine. And at first it used to drive me absolutely bonkers. I used to think that is quite rude, and actually it makes me feel like you didn't care about anything that I said. And then I learned about this stuff. So then I learned that actually some people have got a really strong auditory preference. And for them, kind of the visuals are probably not important. Actually,
that's me. Actually, I have I like this, this Zoom stuff, because although I'm a technological dunce, it's dead easy. You set it up; it's a recurring meeting. I just have to click on a few buttons, and here we are. And we can have a chat, and I can hear you, and I can see you, and I get a sense of how you're feeling, and hopefully you can do the same for me. One of the things that frustrates me is, do you remember that stuff that what was his name? Albert Morabian.
Ah, yes. What a genius.
Yeah, it
We're
was.
surrounded by geniuses, aren't we, Steve? It makes me wonder,
Well,
when are we going to
genius
become
of the giant.
geniuses?
Yeah.
But yeah, Albert Morabian.
Albert Morabian. Turns out he was an Iranian psychologist, but in the States. And in the 60s, he did that research into where we get meaning from in our communication. And you know, his figures have been challenged since then. But he thought it was around about, we get 7% of our meaning from the words.
Yes. Yep.
So for me, on something like an email, then I'm getting 7% on a good day.
Yeah.
On a bad day, you know, it's just blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the rest, I forget. If anybody out there knows, and I've got those figures at the fingertips, I think it was about 7% that Morabian was saying we get from the actual vocabulary, the words that we use. The rest we get from the qualities of our voice, which I think was about 35%.
I think it's 38 for that. And then the last bit is 55, if I remember correctly.
Comes from our body language. It's crazy. But, do you know, so it explains the evolution of the emoji to try and give a broader sense to, you know, words in black and white over, you know, our digital communications.
And that for me was, again, when I read this stuff. So this is where I love how it all starts to come together, almost like a jigsaw. You know, you go, oh, I've got the senses on the one hand, and then I've got the Morabian principles on the other hand, and then I've got this stuff about time and how people. So if people remember who are watching this, a couple of weeks ago we did that wonderful session with Sarah Bishop about time. And then it links into some of the stuff that we've talked about state management. And actually, if I understand my state at any given moment in time, I can understand how I can communicate with someone more effectively. And you start to build these layers, don't you, of kind of knowledge and experience and expertise.
Yeah.
So kind of when I learned that, I thought, wow, you know, that is interesting, isn't it? It's 7%. So again, just to rephrase this, we get meaning from communication. 7% of the meaning of communication from a person is the content, and I love it the way that it was described to me back when I was learning it, as though, so it's the words as though they were written on a page. So if you imagine someone transcribing our Zoom call now, where we take meaning from communication is just 7% of that. So you could read that, and that's actually right, because I've read a lot of plays in my time, and it kind of, you know, you have to kind of almost conjure an image. You have to almost kind of second position how that person is reacting, and you don't know if they are, because all you can see is the content. And then you perhaps go to watch that play. So a classic is Macbeth. We all perhaps, or any Shakespeare, we learn about it in school, and then you go to watch the performance of that play, and you're going, yeah, that's not
a good example.
That's not what I picked up there. That is kind of when I was reading the play. That is not what I. That is
No. I when I worked with the naughty kids in the pupil referral units, we used to take them down to London. We had an annual residential in London, because most of the young people have never had the opportunity to go to the capital city. So it was just a fabulous thing, watching people's faces as we went on the London Eye, and those iconic buildings that they may be seen on the TV or on films or wherever, but they kind of knew about at one level, but they had a chance to experience it direct. They were great. We had some wonderful times. But one of the things that we used to do in the evenings, we'd take them to the theatre. We'd take them to a play. And so these were young people who were going forward for things like their GCSEs. And as part of their GCSE in English, they had to, you know, learn about a Shakespeare play. And the English teachers just do such a fabulous job of turning these words from, you know, 4 or 5 centuries ago into something that kind of makes sense. But the best way of doing it is to see it performed.
Yeah.
We used to go to this play that was running for years in the Criterion Theatre in Leicester Square, and it was called, it was done by the Reduced Shakespeare Company, and they used to do every Shakespeare play or touch on it in 90 minutes. And it was a group of American and Canadian men who used to do everything, and it was hilarious. It was hilarious. And I suspect it was a little bit about, you know, this is how Shakespeare wanted it to be enjoyed, not just as a historical story or some kind of dry academic document, but this was meant to be fun. So you guys were throwing water on the stage. They were dressing as women with like balloons as breasts, and they were tripping over each other and kicking each other in the private. It was totally slapstick, and the understanding those young people took from that 90 minutes of mayhem about, hang on, this isn't just about the words. This is about kind of people using the words as a way to get messages across, and it's about more than the words. So, for example, they would these guys would do it in a way so that they would do like topical jokes. You know, they'd tell a joke about a politician or you know, about a football team or whatever, but it was specific to you know, 2016 or whenever it was, not 1616, but specific. So there was a bit of ad lib, and they were using the play as a message to talk about other things as well. Brilliant. And for me, that was always just a lovely example of how we take meaning from different things,
from absolutely everything.
It's just the words. Brilliant.
Because you know, you could read that play in 2016. And it makes sense. It would make a hell of a lot of sense, perhaps. But when you add that whole other kind of third dimension to it about your vocal cords, so actually high pitch, low pitch, the tonality, the kind of the pace, the kind of all that kind of stuff that. And again, Steve, I'd love to hear your experiences, because from what I've heard, so I'm going to do the trainers next year with your wonderful partner, Catherine. And I'd love to hear, because I've heard you do a lot of this kind of stuff on the trainer. So we'll come on to that in a minute as to how you can use your body language and in particular teachers. So, you know, I'm hoping that the podcast goes as far and as wide as possible. So actually, how do we use all of that? Because, you know, again, it's interesting for me that growing up, when you go to school and kind of the disconnect between what a teacher would say and their behavior, or the tonality of what they were saying. And you'd go, there seems to be a real disconnect. And what people would take is this bit, because this is only 7% of the meaning of communication that you get. So actually what you're getting is 93% from elsewhere. And it's such a shame, because I know that actually if teachers were taught this, especially sort of qualified teacher here, walked into my first day in a school, wasn't a qualified teacher for very long, but walked into my school for the first day, and thankfully I knew this stuff, so I could manage my state. Again, it goes back to state and how these things all interlink and overlap with each other. But had I not known it, I'd be saying one thing, content, so something would be coming out of my mouth like, good morning, children, you know, I'm so glad, and blah, blah, blah. But actually my body language would give off a completely different signal about, this guy's quite timid, he's quite nervous, he's
got a target painted on him.
He's got a target painted on him. Let's just go all out. And it's interesting, because I had two experiences of teaching. So I started my teaching qualification back in 2013, before I knew any NLP or any of this wonderful stuff about communication, and then did my final year back in 2019. And the difference between the two teaching placements, Steve, was unreal, because I use this very model to kind of go, nope, I need to be congruent. And you know, there are methodologies in NLP that can get you into a confident state without you necessarily having to blag it. So, you know, it's about, and we'll cover those in subsequent weeks, but you can draw down on times where you have been confident in the past. and just simply transport yourself to that place and be able to kind of access that state. So you are confident, your words are confident, your body language is confident, everything is confident about you. And the experiences were phenomenal. The differences in experiences, sorry, should I say, were phenomenal. In that this set absolutely bullseyed me, and that year felt painful as a teacher, because I just thought these kids know that I'm unsure of myself, know that, and they can, and I'd be sat there scratching my head, Steve, going, but I don't know why. So I'm presenting confidence. I clearly am. I've got the teacher voice on, and I've got the, and I didn't. I had the teacher voice on. I did, but that was 7%.
It's what my partner Catherine calls seepage.
Yeah.
She calls it sort of emotional seepage.
Yeah.
And do you remember that last week we were talking about the Mercedes model, how we think, how we feel, how we behave are all interlinked, and you can't fool it.
Yeah.
What happens is you can be behaving in a way that, like you were describing, as I'm confident, blah 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 blah, and all this, but because you may be thinking and feeling that I'm a target here and these are out to get me, what happens is that it just seeps through into your behavior, and it's inevitable. And because we take such a massive part of our meaning of communication from body language, it means that stuff that is tiny little gestures, or the way we say one word or whatever, gives away such a lot of information. We just know when people are, perhaps, for example, lying to us. There's something that kicks in that just there's an alarm. Well, maybe I'm speaking for myself really, but that, you kind of watch some politician or whatever on the telly telling us about how things are going to get better, and there's just something about their body language that you just think, you don't believe it, so why would I? But you mentioned the Train the Trainers course, and you've just given me an idea, because you asked me to do a little session on your monthly.
Yes. Monthly practice sessions.
Yeah. So I just give me an idea, because it reminded me of the work of Virginia Satir. And you read a story of Virginia Satir's last week.
We've mentioned a couple of times as well.
I'm okay. I'm me and I'm okay. But one of the things that she looked at was how people communicate with their body. And she came up with what she called categories of communication, really. And it was about, the categories are about how we use our body, and specifically what we do with our hands. So she came up with 5 of these, and off the top of my head, I can remember 3. So one of them is quite a powerful one. So you might be stood, and with your hands, you might have your hands face downwards, and kind of it's a position of, it gives that idea of stability. And that groundedness that we were talking about again last week. So this is, for her, is a position of great strength and control, actually. If you flip your hands over, then it becomes kind of pleading. Almost. So you're asking for something back, rather than being fully in control. So there's and I should say at this stage, none of these things are either good or bad. It's just the way that we communicate. And these are some of the messages that we might be giving that we don't realise while we're doing it. The other one that I can remember off the top of my head is about the aggressor. And the aggressor uses their hands as weapons. So variations on the point. Pow, pow, pow. Or when the Donald is doing this all the time, because often this moves into this. So it's fascinating stuff. And if you watch a soap opera with these, I wish I could remember off the top of my head the other 2 categories. If anybody knows, please remind me. So just off the, if you're watching a soap opera or a film, I mean, watch EastEnders and see all the aggression that's going on. How can anybody watch EastEnders?
And you've just reminded me of another thing that you could watch to really understand body language. So if you really wanted to understand what me and Steve are saying right now and go, well, you know what, it makes sense, but I don't know whether I believe him. Challenge. Steve, challenge yourself to perhaps do it as well. My dear friend, and I call her dear friend, even though I never knew her, but my dear friend, because I believe she was my friend, the great late Cilla Black and Blind Date.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I loved Blind Date.
Did you actually appear on it?
Absolutely. We can talk about that some other time. No, I didn't. I didn't. I've never repeated. No.
Okay.
Genuinely, at one point though, I did want to. Right. I loved it. I loved Blind Date. The challenge though is to watch Blind Date again, a bit like watching EastEnders with the volume off, and notice the kind of the seepage, if you will. Notice the seepage from people, and part of me kind of give you a guarantee, for want of a better word, that I guarantee you, even with the sound off, you'll be able to match the person behind the curtain with one of the three, because you'll be able to see where that person is taking meaning from the meaning of communication from.
Yeah.
Great. You know, some of these programs are great to watch just on mute to just get a really good understanding of how this works in practice, because I think people often go, well, yeah, that's great, and social psychology is from the 60s and 70s, and is that true? And yeah, some of the percentages might have moved up and down, but actually on the whole, I think they're pretty stable.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if on the whole we take half of our meaning from communication from body language. We take another kind of third from the kind of tonality and the pace and all that kind of stuff. And we take a small, very small percent, up to 10% perhaps now, from the words on the page, or perhaps even less now, based on kind of modern technology and whatnot.
I did, well, you know my friend Buzz. Well,
I
our friend
do.
Buzz.
I love Buzz. I think Buzz is a great
Buzz
character.
ever gets around to watching some of these, then hi, Buzz. Buzz, a youth worker and a trainer. He's worked for years for Erasmus Plus, and has a network of fantastic trainers all over Europe. And together we put together a course a couple of years ago called Stagecraft for Youth Workers. And so it was me and Buzz. So Buzz was coming at the idea of how we present ourselves, our body language, how we can master our body language so that the message that people are getting more aligns with the message that we want to put out. Yeah. So Buzz was coming at it from the point of view of music, of sound,
Nice.
of how we can control our environment through the noises that we're making. I was coming at it from an NLP or slant. And we were working with two fantastic trainers from Italy. So Carmina, like I say, is a trainer. Yeah, do you know Carmina?
I don't. I've heard the names and I've heard about them, but I've never met them.
Yeah, Carmina is. He has a fantastic name, Carmina Rodi Falangi.
Oh, nice.
As well as
say that last name again. It sounds fabulous.
Carmina Rodi Falangi.
That does sound amazing.
A lovely guy, a brilliant trainer, really good youth worker, and he was getting bored of life. So he decided that the next thing that he wanted to do was become a stand-up comedian.
Wow.
So part of this course was learning how to control yourself and use humour while you were doing it. So how do you deliver a killer punchline so that you don't get it that little fraction too early or that little fraction too late and it hits and it lands, and how you use humour in your communication. And the fourth member of the team was a wonderful, wonderful person called Mafalda Morganti. And Mafalda is, she's got a beautiful singing voice. She's very spiritual. And she is very much into improvised theatre. And improvised theatre is so much about how we use our bodies. Because she said, well, basically what we're doing was we're feeding off the communication from other people. When we're on the stage doing a performance, doing a live performance in front of an audience. And what we're doing is we've got this person in front of you and we're interacting with them in a very kind of forced or artificial way.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to make it look as though it's as natural as possible. So the way we do that is we are paying attention to what they're saying, but also the way they're saying it is key, because if we get that wrong, everything collapses. It was such a lovely course. We ran it over a week. The last time we did it was last August, and we're hoping to, we're putting in a bid to Erasmus Plus before we get dragged kicking and screaming. Anyway, moving on. So we're putting in a bid for perhaps doing a version of Stagecraft next year. I hope it comes off, because it's a joy to do, and
that just brings together.
You learn so much from it.
You just brought together there the 3 or 4 elements of. So for me, that there's one element of your words. So that's important, because if you don't say anything, then you're ultimately. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. I was about to say, if you don't say anything, you're not conveying anything, but you are. So we've just discussed that you are.
You can't not
Even
communicate.
so, your words are quite important. So your messages and your words and whatnot. And then that thing about actually your tonality, your structure, your kind of your presence, and again, one of the things that I know that we learn about the trainers is how you ground yourself. So actually how you ground yourself, so that the words in essence come from the ground up, and we've all been in those situations. I think I was one of those teachers where the voice would come from up here and you wouldn't know what, because
on a good day I was the same at times.
But and it was because we weren't I believe anyway, because we weren't grounded enough.
Yeah.
And so it would just take one incident for that voice to rise to quite a high pitch, and to give that meaning that you're no longer in control, mate. You have no control in this situation now. And then that final element about your body language. And actually, by having a deliberate action here or deliberate hand movement there, or and that for me is this what we've talked about for the last hour is this Morabian principle. Bless him. That's where we take meaning from communication from. And sign me up, Steve. I'm there. I'm on that course. If it comes out, it'll be fabulous, because it's it sounds like such an amazing.
Oh, it's brilliant
program.
Yeah.
And if anyone else would like to come along, then again, please do contact Steve. We haven't had much interaction, unfortunately, Steve, and I do think that's my fault. So I think that's because I didn't put the notification out there that we'd be on live today. And I don't think perhaps anyone knew that we were going to be on live today. So bless, this is the first week that we've had no comments.
Wake up, everybody, we're here.
I just give this sad face with the hopes that people just, after.
I can tell, your body language was. It's all false tears.
Is it good false tears? Is it convincing?
No.
Okay.
Not remotely.
Well, perhaps I definitely need to do your course then. Perhaps that. Anyway, it is coming on to 26 minutes past 11. And I think we've explored the communication model, unless you'd like to add anything, Steve. So we can continue this conversation for the next few weeks. And, we've already started to touch on things that we'll be covering. We'll be covering over the next few weeks. So looking a bit more. Someone's commented, Steve. Finally, it's a lady called Mary. So I think Mary or Hannah is tuning in for the first time, I think. Anyway, this is the first time that she's commented anyway that I can remember. Apologies if you've commented before, Mary. But yeah, thank you for commenting.
Oh, welcome. And it's lovely to have you with us.
This has been so interesting, with a smiley face.
Cool.
So Mary, we're on every single Friday, 10:30 till 11:30. So please do tune in. Okay, I think people like it, Steve. Let's not give them the option of not liking it. I think we do. And Tony, yes, I was wondering where our good friend Tony was. He just said, and see this. I know this is down to me partly. So he said, "Missed you today. We'll catch up."
Okay.
So I think I do need to just set something up as a bit of a reminder. because we're busy people. Everyone's busy and blessed, I think, and it's that whole thing about time.
Yeah.
Before you know it, it's Friday again, and people are going, "Really? It's Friday again? Since when? Since and it's all blurring into one." And we still need to have our conversation about how me and you have done time over the last 6-7 months, because we've got a very similar time preference. So if people are wondering what I'm talking about, Steve had a week off, having a lovely holiday with his partner, and instead we had a wonderful co-host who will pop in from time to time, the lovely Sarah Bishop. Amazing educator, amazing woman, doing some great stuff around leadership and women. Just fab all around, and a big fan of Downton Abbey. So absolutely my kind of woman.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely my kind of woman. So when Sarah joined us, we talked about time and how we make sense of the world through time. And so please have a look back at that episode. It is on YouTube. And we need to have a very similar conversation, because whilst mine and Sarah's time preferences were slightly different, mine and yours are quite similar. And so it'd be interesting to have that conversation too.
I'm not sure they are,
Do you not think so?
No, I'm not sure.
Well, we'll have a natter at some point about it. I think that'll be really. I think that'll be a really nice conversation to have. But yeah, all of this stuff is on YouTube. So if you want to look back at any sessions, or if you want to join us live, so if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to join us live, please connect with us via Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Tony just said, I was shaving my head. Thanks for that, Tony.
It's Friday morning. What else is there to do?
And Mary said, also looks, sometimes a look speaks louder than words.
Yes, absolutely.
And it goes back to that thing about body language. So I was saying it before, and we'll finish in a couple of minutes, but I was saying to you before I was going to say, well, actually, you can't communicate without words, but you can. And that wonderful presupposition that you said, you cannot not communicate. And Mary, you've summed it up right there. Even though you're saying no words at all, a look can give you so much meaning.
Yeah.
And no, so I remember I used to have the look with young teachers and educators. We've got the look, haven't we, Steve? The look. The look. Well, there's that look as well. But I remember my look used to be kind of arms folded, head down a little bit, and kind of.
Wow, that's quite scary.
And there used to be
shaking the head.
The head nod was like. And I can sense myself smiling a little bit, because I'm looking at you, and it's making me chuckle a little. But it would be kind of
very much.
It would not in that sense, but it would be kind of, and it would get to the kids.
Hey, I tell you what, I bet your mum's got a look.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Oh,
thank you, Mary.
And parents, parents are the givers, I think, of looks. I think that's where we pick stuff up from. And again, we'll go into this in subsequent sessions about where do we pick some of this stuff up from. But we're going to end it there for this week. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a delight to have you. And I will send out a reminder this week for next week, so that people know that is happening. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Terrific.
Until then, take care, have a good weekend and a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jaff. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.